The morning started like any other. Quiet, calm, ordinary. I made my tea, sat by the window, and opened the envelope with the electricity bill. But when I walked to the bank that day, everything changed. The teller looked at her screen, frowned, and whispered, "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Your account shows a zero balance." For a moment I thought she was joking. I laughed softly and said, "No, there must be some mistake. Please check again. It's my pension account." She checked twice. Then she looked at me with the kind of pity that makes your stomach twist. "There's nothing here, ma'am. It was emptied 2 days ago." My hands began to shake. "That's impossible," I said. "Only my son Daniel has access." I rushed home, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out every other sound. I opened my phone and called him again and again. No answer. Then I saw it. A new photo posted online. Daniel and his wife, Mia, smiling on a beach, sunglasses on, drinks in hand. Her caption said, "Vacation time with my favorite people, hubby and mom." My knees went weak. My son, the boy I raised alone, had taken my life savings to fund a vacation with his wife and her mother. My voice cracked as I whispered to myself, he wouldn't. He couldn't. But deep inside, I knew he could. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I sat on the cold kitchen floor that night. The walls felt too close, too quiet. Every sound, the ticking clock, the wind outside, felt like it was reminding me of how foolish I'd been. I had trusted him with everything, every penny, every document, every dream. I thought about the years I'd spent saving. I worked nights sewing clothes for neighbors. I sold my jewelry to pay for his college. I skipped meals so he could have enough. And now, all that was gone. Not stolen by a stranger, but by the boy I once held in my arms. I remember whispering, "Why, Daniel? Why would you do this to me?" The phone finally rang at midnight. His name flashed on the screen. My hands trembled as I answered. "Daniel," I said, trying to sound calm. He sighed. "Mom, please don't be dramatic. I just borrowed it. We needed a break." "Borrowed?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Daniel, that money was my security, my medicine, my rent." He interrupted sharply. "Stop acting like a victim. You live in my house rent-free. You don't need that money." The silence that followed was colder than any winter I'd known. I whispered, "You emptied my life savings, Daniel." He said nothing, only the sound of waves in the background. Then, a woman's laughter, Mia's. "Tell her I said hi," she shouted. The call ended. I sat there, phone pressed against my chest, unable to breathe. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept walking from room to room, touching things I once bought for him. His old trophies, his childhood drawings, the faded photo of his father holding him. Each one felt like a knife now. By morning, I felt hollow. I didn't cry anymore. Tears couldn't fix this. When the mailman came by, he asked, "You okay, ma'am? You look pale." I smiled faintly. "Just tired," I said. But inside, something was changing. It was as if a door had closed, the door that held all my softness. That evening, I went to my room and opened my small wooden box, the one where I kept all my papers, birth certificates, house documents, pension slips. I checked everything. I had nothing left but the roof over my head. Even that. I wasn't sure if it was safe. Daniel had once insisted on handling my paperwork to make things easier. Now I wondered what else he had taken. I whispered to the empty room. I trusted the wrong son. For the next few days, I lived in silence. I didn't call him again. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I couldn't bear the shame. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I didn't recognize, a woman who gave everything and was left with nothing. One afternoon, my neighbor Carol stopped by. "You haven't come to church, dear. Is everything all right?" I forced a smile. "Just under the weather." She looked at me closely. "You sure?" I nodded. "Yes, Carol. Everything's fine." When she left, I closed the door and leaned against it, my legs weak. I wasn't ready to share my humiliation with anyone. Not yet. The next morning, I checked my phone again. No message from Daniel. But Mia's account was full of vacation photos, her new handbag, her dinner plates, her laughter. And there, in one of the pictures, I saw something that broke me completely. She wore my gold bracelet, the one my husband gave me before he died, the one I kept in the top drawer for special days. I whispered, "No," and pressed the phone to my chest. The bracelet had been in my jewelry box for years. That meant Daniel had been taking things even before the money. I sat there, shaking. My whole body trembled. I realized I had been blind. I thought love could fix everything. I thought motherhood was enough to protect me. But love without respect is just another word for weakness. When evening came, I opened the curtains and watched the streetlights flicker on. I saw mothers walking with their sons, laughing, holding hands, and for the first time in my life, I envied them. I whispered, "I raised you alone, Daniel. I buried my husband. I worked day and night. And this is how you repay me?" No answer came, only silence. 2 days later, my electricity got cut off. The bills I had planned to pay with that money were now overdue. I called Daniel again, desperate. "Please, Daniel, I can't pay my bills. Just send me something." He sighed loudly. "Mom, stop calling me like this. You're making me look bad in front of me." "Yeah." I froze. "I'm your mother, Daniel. How can asking for my own money make you look bad?" "Because you sound desperate," he snapped. "We'll talk when I get back." The line went dead again. I dropped the phone and sank to the floor. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. That night, I ate a slice of bread and drank water. I had no appetite. I sat in the dark, whispering prayers that felt empty, and then, out of nowhere, I remembered something. Years ago, when Daniel was 10, I had caught him lying about breaking a neighbor's window. He cried, begged, said he'd never lie again. I forgave him. That night, as I sat alone in the dark, I realized he never stopped lying. He just got better at it. Days turned into weeks. He never called. The only updates I got were through Mia's pictures. New outfits, restaurants, smiles. They looked happy. I was invisible to them. One afternoon, Carol knocked again. "Electricity still out?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. She frowned. "That boy of yours should be ashamed. Everyone in the neighborhood knows what you did for him." I forced a smile. "He's just busy." She sighed. "Busy spending your money, maybe." When she left, I sat by the window and looked at the street again. Something inside me began to stir, not anger, but a strange, cold calm. I had spent my whole life being kind, and what did it give me? Loneliness, humiliation, empty pockets. That night, I went through my husband's old papers again. I found a small notebook, one he had kept when we ran a little boutique years ago. My name was on the registration. I smiled faintly. It had been so long since I thought of myself as more than just Daniel's mother. I whispered, "Maybe I can be her again." I started listing ideas, writing notes, small plans. My hands shook as I wrote, but it felt good, like breathing after being underwater for too long. The next day, I took the bus downtown. I met an old friend, Clara, who once helped me in the boutique. When she saw me, she gasped, "You look tired, my dear. What happened?" I hesitated. Then, for the first time, I told the truth. "My son took everything," I said softly. "He emptied my account." Her hand covered her mouth. "Oh, Mary." "I don't want pity," I said. "I just need work." She nodded. "Then you'll have it. Come by tomorrow. I'll help you restart." For the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny spark of hope. When I got home, I checked my messages. Still nothing from Daniel. But this time, it didn't hurt as much. The pain was still there, deep, steady, but something stronger had begun to grow over it. That night, as I sat by the window again, I whispered to the dark, "He took my money, but he didn't take my strength." I closed my eyes and saw my husband's face. His voice echoed in my memory. "Mary, You're stronger than you think." A tear rolled down my cheek, but it wasn't just sadness anymore. It was resolve. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I cleaned the kitchen, folded my husband's old apron, and wore it again. The smell of fabric and soap brought back memories of laughter, of small victories, of the woman I used to be. I made myself a promise. "You'll regret what you did, Daniel," I whispered. "Not because I'll hurt you, but because I'll rise." I walked to the mirror and looked at myself, really looked. The wrinkles, the tired eyes, the lines of age and sacrifice. For years I'd seen weakness in them, but now I saw something else. Power. He took my money, but not my mind. He betrayed my trust, but not my soul. As the sun rose, I opened the curtains and whispered, "This is not the end. It's the beginning." And that was the moment the old mother died, and the woman she used to be, the one who built everything from nothing, was born again. When I woke up the next morning, the sunlight felt strange. It wasn't warm anymore. It felt sharp, like it was cutting through me. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring, at the phone. Still no message from Daniel. Not one word. It had been 3 weeks since he drained my account. 3 weeks of silence. I used to check my phone every hour. Now I just stared at it like it was an old wound that wouldn't heal. That morning I whispered, "He'll call today. He has to." But deep down, I knew he wouldn't. I didn't tell anyone the truth. I didn't want the pity. I told people he was busy with work, but every time I said it, my voice cracked. I started replaying our past in my head. Every memory that once felt warm now burned like fire. When Daniel was little, he used to hold my hand while crossing the road. He'd say, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll protect you." Now, he was the one I needed protection from. The nights were the worst. I'd wake up and see my husband's photo on the shelf, his smile calm, his eyes kind, and I'd whisper, "You'd be ashamed if you saw what he's become." But even then, I couldn't stop loving him. That was the curse of motherhood. You bleed, and you still call it love. One evening, my neighbor Carol knocked again. "You haven't been out in days, Mary. Come have tea with me." I smiled weakly. "Maybe tomorrow." She frowned. "Tomorrow never comes with you anymore." I closed the door, my throat tight. She didn't know the truth. Nobody did. That night I tried to cook something. Soup, maybe. But as I opened the cabinet, I froze. The shelves were almost empty. I hadn't gone grocery shopping in 2 weeks. I didn't even have enough for that. I sat down and whispered, "What kind of mother ends up begging her own son for help?" Just then, my phone buzzed. For a moment, my heart jumped. Daniel. But it wasn't him. It was Mia. The message said, "Hi, Mom. Hope you're okay. We're still away for a few more days. Don't worry. Daniel will fix everything when we return." Fix everything. Those 2 words made me laugh. A bitter, broken laugh that echoed through the empty kitchen. I typed back, "Tell Daniel I'm fine," but I deleted it. I didn't want them to know how desperate I was. The next day, I went through my drawer again, searching for coins, anything to buy bread. That's when I saw the small photo album Daniel made in school when he was 8. "My family," it said in his messy handwriting. Inside were drawings, me, him, and his father. Underneath he had written, "My mom is my hero." My throat closed. I touched the page with trembling fingers. What happened to that boy? Where did he go? I remembered when he brought Mia home for the first time. She was polite, charming. "You raised such a wonderful son," she said. I believed her. I believed everything. In the beginning, she would help me cook, ask about my day. But slowly, the questions stopped. The smiles faded. Then came the whispers. I would walk into the kitchen, and she'd go silent. One day, I heard her tell Daniel, "Your mom's too controlling. She needs to learn boundaries." And Daniel said, "I'll handle her." That sentence still echoes in my head. Handle her, like I was a problem, not his mother. After their wedding, things changed faster than I could blink. They moved into my house, our house, because it was more practical. I didn't mind. I was happy to have them close. But soon, my things started disappearing. My chair by the window, my mug, the old clock from my husband. Small things, but they meant everything to me. Then Mia started making comments. Maybe you should get some rest, Mom. You look tired. Maybe Daniel and I can handle things around here. Handle things. Those words again. I smiled then, but inside I felt something sink. Every decision went through them. Bills, groceries, repairs, all of it. I became a guest in my own home. And Daniel, he changed too. He stopped talking to me like a son. He spoke like a manager giving instructions. One night, I overheard them in the living room. Mia said, "Your mom's always hanging around. We need space." Daniel sighed. "I know. I'm trying to make her understand." "Then make her," she snapped. My chest tightened. I quietly went to my room, holding back tears. A few days later, Daniel came in with a smile. "Mom, let's make things easier. I'll handle your finances. You don't need to stress." I was so proud. I thought he was being responsible. I handed him my documents, my card, everything. Now I realized that was the moment I lost control of my life. That night, after he took my papers, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong, but I ignored it. Mothers always ignore the warning signs when it comes to their children. And now, here I was, sitting in darkness, counting the cost of love. Days passed, and I noticed something strange. Even though they were away, someone had been entering the house. Things were slightly moved, drawers opened, boxes shifted. I checked the front lock. It was fine. Maybe I was just imagining it. But one evening, as I was cleaning the table, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I froze. "Daniel?" I called out. No answer. When I stepped out, the back door was slightly open. My heart raced. I grabbed a stick from the corner, walked slowly outside, but the yard was empty. Then I noticed something near the trash can. An empty wine bottle with Mia's favorite brand. They had been coming while I was asleep. To take more. That night, I sat by the window again, too afraid to close my eyes. My mind replayed every moment. Every time I gave too much. Every time I stayed silent. Love had blinded me. It had made me weak. The next morning, I packed a small bag. Not to leave. I had nowhere to go, but because I wanted to be ready. Ready for whatever was coming. That afternoon, Carol knocked again. "Mary, are you sure you're all right? You look thinner every day." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, Carol." She sighed. "You're too kind, you know. Kindness doesn't always bring peace." Her words stayed with me. When she left, I looked around the house. Every corner, every piece of furniture that held memories. And I whispered, kindness cost me everything. But I wasn't going to let it cost me my dignity too. A week later, Daniel and Mia returned from their vacation. Their car pulled up with loud music and laughter. I stood by the window, frozen. Daniel walked in first. "Hey, Mom," he said cheerfully, like nothing had happened. I didn't answer. I just looked at him. He frowned. "What's wrong now?" "What's wrong?" I repeated softly. "Daniel, you took my money." He sighed. "Not this again. I told you I'll return it." "When?" I asked. "When will you return the nights I stayed hungry for you? The years I worked 2 jobs to pay your fees?" Mia stepped forward. "Why are you making this so dramatic? It's just money, Mom." I turned to her. "Just money? That was my husband's pension. It was my safety, my peace." Daniel rolled his eyes. "We needed a break, okay? You're acting like I robbed a bank." "You robbed your mother," I said quietly. His jaw clenched. "Enough. Stop guilt-tripping me." I stood there in silence. My hands trembled. but I didn't cry. He stormed to his room, muttering, "I can't deal with this right now." Mia followed him, slamming the door. I sat down at the table, staring at the empty teacup in front of me. For the first time, I saw the truth clearly. My love had made him selfish. That night, I found myself whispering to the dark. Maybe I raised the wrong son. He had my husband's face, my eyes, my name on his papers, but not my values. And that realization cut deeper than the loss of money. The next morning, Mia walked in, pretending to be sweet. "Mom, we didn't mean to upset you. We're under stress, you know. Life's hard." I smiled faintly. Yes, life is hard, especially when your own child is your burden. She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said softly, just thinking out loud. That day, I cooked dinner for Al, all of us. Not out of love, but out of habit. We sat at the table in silence. Daniel scrolled through his phone. Mia chewed slowly, not meeting my eyes. Finally, Daniel said, "I'm applying for a loan next week. I'll pay you back soon." I looked at him. "Don't bother. Keep it. Consider it a gift." He frowned. "A gift?" "Yes," I said. "A gift from a mother to the wrong son." He stared at me, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means the son I loved died long ago," I whispered. He slammed his hand on the table. "Stop saying things like that." Mia grabbed his arm. "Daniel, let's go." They left the table, slamming the door behind them. When the silence returned, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not for the money, not for the betrayal, but for the boy who no longer existed. That night, I opened my notebook again, the one with my boutique plans. I wrote a new line on the first page. He took everything, but not my courage. I closed it, placed it by my bed, and whispered, "Tomorrow, I start over." As I turned off the light, I thought of something my husband once told me. Love doesn't mean letting people destroy you, even if they're your own blood. I finally understood what he meant. Love had a price, and I had paid it all. When I looked at myself that morning, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. My reflection looked older, thinner, defeated. The light in my eyes was gone, replaced by something dull, something that looked like surrender. The woman in the mirror didn't look like a mother anymore. She looked like a servant. I whispered to my reflection, "What have you become?" And that was when it hit me. I had been giving, sacrificing, and forgiving for so long that I had completely disappeared. Just the night before, I had overheard my son on the phone. His voice was low, cold. "She keeps asking about the money," he said. "Just tell her it's invested. She won't understand anyway." And then his wife laughed, a soft, cruel laugh that echoed in my chest. "Your mother is too emotional. She'll forget about it soon," she said. They both laughed. That sound, their laughter, broke something inside me. "I'm glad you're here," I said, trying to steady my trembling voice. "If you're watching this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from." That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls of my own house closing in on me. The same house I had built with my late husband's savings. The same house where I had imagined growing old surrounded by love. But love had turned into debt. Respect had turned into control. By morning, I felt like a ghost walking through rooms that no longer belonged to me. My daughter-in-law sat at the dining table, scrolling on her phone, a slice of toast untouched in front of her. I poured myself tea and quietly sat down. She looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Good morning, Mom," she said sweetly. "Did you sleep well?" I wanted to say, "No. I didn't sleep because I heard your laughter while you were stealing my peace," but I only said, "Yes, thank you." Then she looked at her phone again and said, "Oh, by the way, Daniel wants to book tickets for the trip next week. You're okay with it, right?" "Trip?" I asked. "Yes," she said casually. "Just a little family vacation. Daniel, me, and my mom. Somewhere warm." Her words hit me like cold rain. Your mom? I repeated softly. But, I thought, oh, you can come next time, she interrupted. We all need a break, you know. You've had enough stress. I just nodded, but inside, my chest was burning. After she left, I went straight to the study. My hands were shaking as I logged into my bank account. I still remember how slow the page loaded, how my heart pounded with every second that passed. Then the numbers appeared. Balance. $0. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My heart stopped, and my world froze. All the savings from 25 years of work, gone. My knees gave out, and I fell to the floor. I stared at the screen, the numbers mocking me. No, this can't be real, I whispered. It's a mistake. It has to be. I called my son again and again. He didn't answer. When he finally picked up, his tone was calm. Too calm. Mom, I told you. It's an investment. Don't worry. Investment? I said, my voice cracking. You took everything without asking me. Mom, calm down, he said. You're overreacting. Overreacting? I shouted. Daniel, that was my life's work, your father's savings. He sighed. Mom, stop making a scene. You'll get it back. We just needed it for a while. We? I whispered. Yes, me and Grace. We're building something. You wouldn't understand. My hands went cold. So, this is what I am to you now? Just a wallet? He hung up. The silence that followed was worse than the words. I sat on the floor for hours. My tea went cold beside me, and the sun moved slowly across the carpet. That was the first time I truly felt alone. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. My eyes were red, swollen. I looked like a stranger. The woman in the mirror asked me, "Why are you still here? Why do you let them break you?" I didn't have an answer. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast, I cleaned, I folded laundry that wasn't even mine. But Grace noticed something was off. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked, pretending to care. I forced a smile. "Just tired." She tilted her head. "You shouldn't stress about money. Daniel said you get too emotional about these things." Her tone made my stomach twist. "I'm emotional," I said slowly, "because money is not just paper to me. It's sacrifice. It's everything I worked for, everything I lost." She shrugged. "You'll be fine, Mom. We'll handle things." I wanted to scream, "Handle things? You already took everything." But I stayed silent, because something inside me was changing. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was observation. I was beginning to see who they really were. That evening I went to the mirror again. The woman staring back at me didn't look broken this time. She looked angry, awake. I whispered, "You let them take everything. But they forgot one thing, your strength." That was the first night I made a plan. I started small, quietly, secretly. When Daniel and Grace went out for dinner, I went through the drawers in the study. I found receipts, passwords scribbled on scraps of paper, even an unsigned property form. Then I found something worse, a hidden folder on his computer labeled Future Plans. I clicked it. Inside were screenshots of conversations between Daniel and Grace. They talked about selling the house, my house. Grace had written, "Once it's in our name, she can move to a care home. That'll make things easier." My hands shook. My breath came in short gasps. "Move me to a care home?" I whispered. "After everything?" For a moment, the room spun. I felt sick. Then, I felt something else. Fire. The kind of fire that comes when you finally realize the truth. All those years of love, of sacrifice, of motherly blind faith. Gone. They had used me. And suddenly, I wasn't the same woman anymore. The next morning, Daniel walked in casually, whistling. He didn't expect to see me sitting in the living room, holding the printed documents. "Morning, Mom," he said. "You're up early." I looked him straight in the eye. "Sit down." He frowned. "What's this about?" I placed the papers on the table. "You were planning to sell this house," I said, "without telling me." He froze. "Where did you get that?" "It doesn't matter," I said. "Tell me why." He sighed. "Mom, you're misunderstanding. We just wanted to simplify things." "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "You want to get rid of me." Grace entered from the hallway, pretending to act surprised. "What's going on?" "Your plans," I said coldly. "Your messages, the care home." Her face went pale. "You read our private stuff?" "Yes," I said. "And I finally saw who you are." Daniel stood up, angry now. "You had no right." I rose too. My voice shook, but it was steady with truth. "I had every right, because everything you have came from me." The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time, they looked guilty. Not because they cared, but because they were caught. Grace crossed her arms. "So what now, Mom? You'll throw us out?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I had something else in mind. Something that would hurt much deeper than words. I turned and walked away. As I passed the mirror in the hallway, I caught a glimpse of myself again. This time, the woman in the mirror looked different. Not defeated, not broken, but alive. And I whispered to her, "It's time." That night, I sat by the window, watching the lights outside fade. I thought about all the moments that led me here. The first time Daniel said, "I'll handle it, Mom." The way Grace smiled when she got her way. The countless times I said yes when I should have said no. I realized I had raised my son to be generous with others, but selfish with me. I had taught him to take care of everyone, except his own mother. Maybe I hadn't raised the wrong son. Maybe I had raised him the wrong way. But I was done. When I went to bed that night, I knew what the next step would be. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be dramatic. It would be smart. Quiet revenge, the kind that leaves no scars, only lessons. Because the woman in the mirror wasn't a victim anymore. She was awake. And soon, they would see just how dangerous silence can be. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker against the dark sky. Inside me, something had changed forever. The quiet, soft-spoken woman they had walked over was gone. For the first time in years, I wasn't crying. I was planning. They thought I was powerless because I was a mother. But what they forgot is that a mother never loses. She just waits. I woke up early, made breakfast as usual, and acted like nothing had happened. My son and his wife were already at the table. Grace was humming, her phone in her hand. Daniel looked at me once and quickly looked away. I served them quietly. Grace smiled. "You don't look well, Mom. You should rest today." I smiled back. "You're right. Maybe I should." Inside, I was burning. After they left for the day, I took out the documents I had printed, the property papers, the bank statements, and those messages they thought I'd never find. I spread them on the table like battle plans. Then, I called an old friend, Martha. She had worked with me years ago in the bank before I retired. When she picked up, I could barely speak. "Martha, I need your help." Her voice softened. "You sound shaken, dear. What's wrong?" "My son emptied my account," I said quietly. "And I think he's trying to sell my house." There was silence on the line. Then she said, "Come to me tomorrow morning. Bring everything." I did. The next day, I met her at the old branch. She looked at me with that mix of pity and anger only true friends have. We went to her small office, and I showed her everything. She looked at the papers, then at me. "You can't let them do this, May. Not your own son." "I already did," I said. "But now I'm taking it back." We spent hours going through the accounts. She helped me trace where the money had gone, multiple transfers to Grace's mother's account, and one large amount to a private travel agency. "They planned this for months," I whispered. Martha nodded. But you still have a chance. Legally and emotionally. Emotionally? I asked bitterly. She smiled faintly. Make them feel what you felt. The helplessness, the loss, the shock. Only then will they understand. That sentence stayed with me. That evening, I went home, acting calm as ever. Daniel was watching TV. Grace was painting her nails. They didn't even notice me walk in. I stood there for a moment, studying them. The couple who had stolen my peace looked so proud, so sure. I said softly, Daniel, I've been thinking. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should stop worrying and let you handle everything. He looked up, surprised. Really? Yes, I said. You're my son. I trust you. Grace grinned. Finally, some peace. That night, they celebrated. They ordered food, laughed loudly, and drank wine like it was a victory toast. They had no idea I was already taking back control. Quietly, step by step. The next morning, I withdrew what little was left from my emergency account. Money they didn't know existed. I used it to hire a lawyer Martha recommended, Mr. Brooks. He was calm, sharp, and quiet, just like the kind of ally I needed. He reviewed the documents, then looked at me. Mrs. May, if your son transferred your funds without written consent, we can act fast. But are you sure you want to go this route? It'll be ugly. I looked at him steadily. They already made it ugly. For the first time, I signed papers against my own son. My hand trembled, but my heart was steady. That night, I couldn't eat. Every bite tasted like guilt. I kept thinking of the boy who once held my hand crossing the street, the boy who used to bring me wildflowers from the park. Where had that boy gone? I whispered to myself. Maybe he never left. Maybe he's just buried under greed. The next day, I started my revenge. Not through shouting, not through violence, but through silence and small, deliberate moves. I stopped cooking for them. I stopped cleaning. I stopped being their shadow. Grace noticed first. Mom, what's wrong with you? The laundry's not done. I looked up from my tea. You're both adults. You can handle it. She scoffed. Daniel, talk to her. She's being dramatic. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Mom, what's going on? What's going on, I said calmly, is that I'm done. Grace rolled her eyes. Done with what? With being useful only when you need me. She laughed. You're just upset about the money. I smiled faintly. You'll see soon enough, Grace. The next few days were strange. I became invisible on purpose. I barely spoke. I only answered when necessary. I watched as their comfort began to crumble. Without me, the house grew messy. Meals were late. Bills went unpaid. Grace complained constantly. Daniel became irritated. And just when tension was at its peak, I made my move. I told them I was going to visit my sister for a few days. Grace didn't hide her relief. Oh, that's great. You should relax. I packed my bag and left, but I didn't go to my sister. I went to a small apartment Martha helped me rent temporarily. It was small, but peaceful. I sat by the window, sipping tea, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Control. 2 days later, the storm began. The lawyer had filed a notice of fraud and asset freeze. All accounts linked to Daniel and Grace were locked. By the third day, Daniel called me. His voice was panicked. Mom, what did you do? The bank froze my account. I answered quietly. You mean my account? Mom, please, this will ruin us, he shouted. It already ruined me, I said softly. Now it's fair. Grace took the phone from him. You're heartless. You're destroying your own family. I took a deep breath. Family? Family doesn't steal from you and laugh while you cry. She screamed, You'll regret this. I hung up. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not out of joy, but out of just Tice. Later that night, I sat alone in the dark, thinking about everything. The revenge didn't bring peace, not yet. But it brought something close. Dignity. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it and froze. Daniel stood there, eyes swollen, hair messy. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded. He came in, looked around the small apartment, and sighed. "You really left?" "Yes," I said. "I had to." He sat down. "Grace is angry. She says we should move out. But I don't know what to do." I looked at him. "You should start by saying the truth." He lowered his head. "I messed up, Mom. I thought you'd always forgive me." I stayed silent. He went on, his voice breaking. "When Dad died, I promised I'd take care of you, but somewhere along the way, I got lost. Grace, she made me believe we deserved more. I forgot what I already had." Tears filled his eyes. For a moment, I saw the boy I once knew. I wanted to hug him, but I didn't. Not yet. "Daniel," I said, "you didn't just take my money. You took my trust, and that's harder to earn back." He nodded. "I know. I'll do whatever it takes." I stood up slowly. "Then start by facing what you've done. No more hiding behind Grace. No more lies." He looked up at me, desperate. "Can I come home?" I shook my head. "Not yet." His eyes filled again. "Mom, please." "I'm not punishing you," I said softly. "I'm teaching you." He covered his face and cried. I stood there quietly, my own tears falling, but I didn't move to comfort him. Some lessons need pain to take root. When he finally left, I closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. Revenge isn't sweet. It's heavy. It makes your heart ache in new ways, but sometimes it's necessary. That night, I looked in the mirror again. The woman staring back wasn't angry anymore. She was calm. She had done what needed to be done. The next morning, I called Martha. "It's done," I told her. She asked gently, "Do you feel better?" I smiled faintly. "Not better, just stronger," she said. "That's enough for now." As I hung up, I realized something. Revenge wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something else, the rebuilding of my soul. Because a mother's love can be endless, but so can her strength. And though I lost my son for now, I found myself again. The woman in the mirror finally looked like me. After Daniel walked out of my apartment that night, the silence felt heavier than ever. It wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, like something had been ripped from inside me and left to echo in the emptiness. I sat by the window until dawn, listening to the city breathe, cars passing, dogs barking, a world moving on while my own stood still. Part of me hoped he'd call again. The other part prayed he wouldn't. When the phone finally rang the next morning, I froze, but it wasn't Daniel. It was Martha. "May," she said quietly, "I heard something from the bank. You should sit down." My heart started pounding. "What is it?" "It's Daniel," she said. "He went to the bank this morning. He was crying, begging them to reverse the freeze. He said he's lost his job and Grace left him." The words hit me like cold water. "Grace left him?" I whispered. "She left?" "Yes. She took what little she could and moved back with her mother." Daniel looked broken. I closed my eyes. My revenge had hit deeper than I imagined. That evening, I went for a walk, something I hadn't done in weeks. The streets looked strange, like they were watching me. I kept thinking of Daniel's face when he cried in my living room, of how small he looked in that moment. Had I gone too far? When I came home, the phone rang again. This time, it was him. "Mom," his voice cracked. "I need to see you." I hesitated, then said, "Come tomorrow morning." He arrived early. His eyes were swollen, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Mom," he began, and softly, "Grace's mother kicked her out too. She's staying with friends. Everything's falling apart." I stayed quiet. He ran a hand through his hair. "I know I deserve this, but I don't know how to fix it." I looked at him. really looked. The proud man who once thought he could buy love now looked like a child again, lost and frightened. "Start with truth," I said. "Start by owning what you did." He nodded, tears forming again. "I emptied your account because I thought I was helping us start fresh. Grace said we needed it before it disappeared in old bills and repairs. I believed her." "Did you believe me when I said that money was all I had left?" I asked. He looked down. "I didn't want to hear it. I thought you'd be fine." I felt my chest tighten. "Fine?" "After losing your father, I worked nights to raise you. I skipped meals so you could study. And when I thought I could finally rest, you—" My voice broke. I couldn't finish. He whispered, "I know, Mom, and I hate myself for it." We sat there in silence. Only the clock ticked, slow, accusing. Finally, I said, "Do you remember the day your father died?" He looked up, startled. "Of course." "You promised you'd take care of me," I said. "But you forgot what that meant." He nodded weakly. "I did. And now I can't even look at myself." "Maybe that's where healing begins," I said softly. "When silence finally replaces excuses." He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You've been talking all your life, defending, explaining, blaming. Maybe it's time you just listen." He didn't answer. His eyes filled again. For the next few days, Daniel called every morning, not to ask for anything, just to talk. Sometimes he said nothing at all, just silence between us. And for the first time, that silence didn't hurt. It healed. But Grace wasn't done. One evening, I received a message from her, just one line. "Yo, you think you won, but I'll make him hate you again." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The next week, Daniel came again. He looked steadier this time, calmer. He said, "Grace came by. She wanted me to sue you." My stomach turned cold. "And what did you say?" He smiled weakly. "I told her I'd rather lose everything than lose you again." Tears filled my eyes. "Daniel." He shook his head. "No, Mom, don't cry. I need to say this. You taught me that money can rebuild, but trust can't. Not easily. I want to earn yours back, even if it takes years." I reached for his hand. For the first time in months, I held it. Trembling, but real. We sat there. Not mother and son, not victim and thief. Just two broken people trying to start over. Still, I couldn't forget what he'd done. Forgiveness doesn't erase memory. It just softens it. The next day, Martha called again. "May, I spoke with the lawyer. The case is in your favor. You can claim every cent back." But when she said that, I felt nothing. The money didn't matter anymore. I told her quietly, "Let it rest for now. I want to see what Daniel does without being forced." She sighed. "You're too kind for your own good." Maybe she was right, but I wasn't doing it for kindness. I was doing it for closure. Weeks passed. Daniel found a small job, nothing fancy but honest. He called me every evening telling me about his work. Then one night he said something that broke me again. "Mom," he said, "I paid the first rent today. I used my own money. I just wish Dad could see me now." I smiled through tears. "He does, Daniel. He always has." Silence followed, but this time it was peaceful. Then his voice softened. "Can I ask something?" "Of course." "Can I come by this Sunday? Maybe we could have dinner together. Like before." My throat tightened. "Yes, Daniel. I'd like that." That Sunday, he came with groceries in his arms. He cooked for me, burned the soup, overcooked the chicken. But it was perfect, because it was honest. As we ate, he said, "Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness yet, but I'm going to earn it." I nodded. "I believe you." After dinner, as he was leaving, he stopped at the door, Grace called again, he said. She said she's pregnant. The world stopped. I stared at him. Pregnant? He nodded slowly. Yes, and she says it's mine. I felt dizzy. What are you going to do? I don't know, he whispered. I can't abandon her, Mom, but I can't go back either. The silence between us this time was painful again, sharp and heavy. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Daniel, do what's right, not what's easy. That's the only way to stop repeating the same mistakes. He nodded. I'll try. After he left, I sat by the window again. The night was quiet, but inside me, a storm began. If Grace was truly pregnant, this wasn't the end. It was a new beginning, one that could either heal or destroy what little was left. A week later, I got another message from her. This time, a photo. It was a sonogram, with a note. He'll grow up knowing his grandmother hates him. My hands shook. Tears blurred my vision. I whispered to myself, no, no child deserves that. The next morning, I called Daniel. Come over, I said. When he arrived, I showed him the message. His face went pale. I don't know if she's telling the truth, he said. Then find out, I replied. Because if she is, that baby is part of you, and part of me. He nodded. I will. Days passed. Then one evening, he called again. His voice was trembling. Mom, it's true. I sat down slowly. Then you know what you have to do. He took a deep breath. Yes, I'll take care of her, but I'll do it my way. No lies, no manipulation, and I'll never let her use the baby to hurt you again. I closed my eyes. A tear slid down my cheek. That's all I needed to hear. After the call ended, I realized something. My silence had taught him more than my anger ever could. Sometimes words build walls. Silence builds understanding. A few months later, Daniel visited again, this time with a small box. He handed it to me. Inside were the documents, the property, the bank rights, everything he'd taken. Mom, he said quietly, these belong to you. I want nothing but your peace. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. As he stood to leave, he turned back and said softly, Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it. When the door closed, I sat there in the dim light, clutching the papers to my chest. And for the first time, the silence around me didn't feel empty. It felt like forgiveness. When Daniel handed me back the property papers, I thought that moment was the end of our story. But life always saves one last test for a mother. A few weeks later, he called me early in the morning. His voice was quiet, shaky. Mom, he said, Grace had the baby. It's a boy. For a second, I couldn't breathe. A boy, my grandson. But I heard no joy in his voice, only fear. Is everything all right? I asked. He paused. She doesn't want me to see him. She says I ruined her life, that the baby will never know I exist. I felt that same old ache rise in my chest again, the pain of helplessness. I had fought this battle once, and now my son was standing in the same storm. I whispered, Come over. When Daniel arrived, I saw exhaustion in his face, the kind that comes from fighting something you can't control. He sat on the couch, hands shaking. Mom, he said, I'm trying to be better. I'm working, I'm paying my bills, I'm staying away from lies. But Grace, she keeps saying I'll never be a father. I looked at him, my once arrogant boy who thought money could fix anything. Now, all he wanted was love. Sit, I said softly. I need you to listen. He looked up, confused. Do you know what your father used to say to me? I asked. He said, May, love isn't about giving everything. It's about giving the right thing. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? I leaned closer. When you took my savings, I thought love meant forgiving you no matter what, but I learned that sometimes love has to say no. Love has to let people feel the consequences. That's the lesson I want you to understand. He swallowed hard. So you think I should just walk away? I shook my head. No, I think you should fight. But not with anger. Fight with patience, with dignity. Let your son grow up knowing his father became a better man even when the world doubted him. He was silent. Then he whispered, "That's hard, Mom." I smiled faintly. Every real thing is. After he left that day, I sat alone at the kitchen table for a long time. The house was quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet it used to be. It was a softer silence, the kind that comes when pain finally begins to heal. I thought about that baby boy, the next generation. I wondered if he would ever know that his grandmother once built her life from nothing, lost everything, and still found peace. Weeks passed. Daniel didn't call much. I knew he was trying to find his way. But one evening, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, I froze. It was Grace. She looked different, tired, thinner, her eyes sunken with sleepless nights. She was holding a small blanket in her arms. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I hesitated. Then I stepped aside. She sat on the couch and uncovered the baby's face. I gasped. He was so small. A tiny face, pink cheeks, a soft whimper. My heart melted instantly. Grace looked at me and whispered, "His name is Samuel." I smiled weakly. "He's beautiful." She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Daniel told you?" "Yes," I said quietly. She took a deep breath. "I was angry. I wanted to hurt him. And you. I thought you both judged me. But the truth is, I was scared. I didn't know how to raise a child without control." Her voice broke. I made him feel small because I was terrified of being alone. I looked at her, this young woman who had once drained me of trust, and I saw not a villain, but a frightened child. "Grace," I said, "fear makes all of us cruel sometimes." She started crying. "He's a good man now, May. I see it. He's trying. I just didn't know how to face him after everything." I reached out and touched her hand. "Then start today." She looked up, eyes wide. "You'd let me?" I smiled sadly. This family has seen enough punishment. What it needs now is peace. She nodded slowly. "I'll call him." That night, when Daniel arrived, I stayed back and watched from the hallway as he stepped inside. Grace stood there, holding the baby. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel whispered, "Is he really mine?" She nodded. "Yes. I'm sorry for everything." He reached out, trembling, and held the baby for the first time. His tears fell onto the small blanket. I couldn't stop mine either. It felt like every broken piece of our lives was being quietly stitched together in that room. When Daniel looked up at me, his eyes were red. "Mom," he whispered, "he's perfect." I nodded. "Yes. Now you know what love feels like when it's real." Over the next few months, Daniel and Grace started rebuilding their lives. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth having ever is. But I watched them grow. Not into perfection, but into humility. Sometimes I'd babysit Samuel while they worked. He'd fall asleep on my chest, and I'd whisper softly, "You're the second chance your father never knew he needed." One evening, while I was putting Samuel to sleep, Daniel walked in quietly. He had a small envelope in his hand. "What's this?" I asked. He smiled. "Open it." Inside were documents. My bank balance restored. Every dollar. My eyes filled instantly. "Daniel, no." He shook his head. "It's yours. I don't want it. I needed to prove something to myself. That I could give back what I once stole." I stood up slowly, tears falling freely now. "You've given me more than that, Daniel. You've given me peace." He hugged me tightly. You taught me what love really costs, Mom. And now I finally understand why you let me fall, so I could learn to stand. In that embrace, I felt the weight of years, the pain, the betrayal, the endless waiting, all melting away. Time passed quietly after that. Samuel grew, laughter filled my house again, and even Grace found her way back to kindness. There were still scars, yes, but scars are proof that healing happened. One morning, Daniel came over for coffee. He sat at the same table where years ago I once cried alone. He looked around and said softly, "Mom, I want you to write it down." I frowned. "Write what?" He smiled. "Everything. What you went through, what you learned. I want my son to read it one day." I stared at him for a moment, then I nodded. That night, I sat by the window with a notebook and began to write. Not as a victim, not even as a mother, but as a woman who survived love, loss, and betrayal, and found herself again. I titled the first page, "The Lesson I Left Him." I wrote about every sleepless night, every tear, every silent morning. I wrote about the moment I realized that revenge brings satisfaction, but forgiveness brings peace. And I wrote about the moment Daniel learned the same, not from my words, but from my silence. When I finished, I looked at the final line and whispered it out loud. A son may forget his mother's warnings, but he never forgets her silence. That night, I felt my heart rest for the first time in years. Weeks later, on my birthday, Daniel handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a silver pendant, engraved with the words, "You taught me love the hard way." I looked up at him, eyes shining. "You learned it the right way." He smiled. "Beck, os of you." I pulled him into a hug, and as I held him close, I realized the truth. I didn't just raise a son. I raised a man who finally understood that love isn't about giving everything away. It's about knowing when to stop, when to forgive, and when to let silence speak louder than anger ever could. And that was my lesson. The one I left him, and the one I'll carry with me till my last breath. What would you do if you were in my place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.